Ignition system maintenance is one of the most dangerous things you can do on a turbine engine. So it's important that you make sure you know what you're doing and follow the manufacturer's manual correctly. This project is designed to help you understand the process. We'll be doing this project on the Allison TF-41 ignition system. And most other capacitor discharge type systems will be similar, but there could be some differences, so don't take this as being correct for all engines. Always consult the maintenance manual. This is the permanent magnet generator, or PMG. The PMG provides power only for the engine ignition and control systems. It provides power, so even if the aircraft electrical system were to completely fail, the engine would keep running. Power from the PMG travels through the input lead into the exciter, which you can see here. The exciter converts the low voltage, low amperage power from the PMG into a high voltage, high amperage pulse, which travels through the two high tension leads to the igniters where the spark is produced. The first step in making the ignition system safe for maintenance is to remove the exciter input lead. This prevents any further power from being able to be sent to the exciter. We'll then wait our 5 minutes, giving time for the bleed resistor to drain the capacitors, making the system safe. To remove the igniter, use the correct size wrench and break the B-nut on the high tension lead. Once it's broken loose, remove the B-nut, but do not pull the lead out of the igniter. When we get the B-nut completely free, we can grab the lead back away from the terminal, pull it out of the igniter, and ground it to the case. That makes this system completely safe. If the bleed resistor had failed and the capacitor was still charged, this would ground the capacitor, discharging it and making the system safe. To remove the igniter, use the correct size deep well socket, break the sleeve bolt loose, and then unscrew it and remove it from the engine, being careful not to drop either the igniter or the sleeve bolt. Igniters are similar to spark plugs in that they have a ceramic insulator that can be cracked if it's dropped on the floor. Carefully remove the igniter from the engine and set it aside for inspection. To remove the PMG, you'll first need to disconnect the cannon plug on the output lead. You can then remove the 4 nuts that secure the PMG to the accessory gearbox. You'll need to use the correct size 12-point socket to do this. The front 2 nuts have a bracket underneath them that acts as the washer. The rear 2 nuts have a special thick beveled washer that has a flat surface and a beveled surface. Make sure when you reinstall those, the beveled surface goes up. When we get all 4 of these nuts backed off to where they're loose, we can remove them by hand. Being careful not to drop anything where it could fall and get lost. Remove the bracket. Store the hardware safely out of the way where it won't get lost. Remove the rear 2 nuts. And make sure we also remove the washers on these so that we don't drop the washers into the gearbox when we pull the PMG off. There's one. This second one can be a little tricky to get out of there. And there's the second one. Once all 4 nuts and washers have been removed, we can remove the PMG and set it on the accessory gearbox, ready to do our ignition test. To set up the ignition system test, you'll take this igniter test box, install the igniter in the test box, and thread the sleeve bolt in hand tight. No need to go more than hand tight. We'll then install the igniter lead onto the igniter Also, hand tight is fine on this one. This one can be a little bit difficult to get threaded on. We'll then allow the igniter in its test box to hang in such a way that we can see through the clear side and see the spark as it happens. Next, we'll need to take this ground cable and we'll connect the lead from the test box onto the ground cable and also connect it to a bracket or something somewhere on the engine that will ground this lead to the engine case. Like that's fine. The other end of this ground lead will go around to the other side of the engine and connect to the test lead on the other box, the other test box. Once that's completed, we're then ready to do our ignition test. We'll need to reconnect the input lead on the exciter and reconnect the output lead on the PMG. With that connected, we'll need to take this air drill with the correct turning adapter, insert it into the drive shaft on the PMG, and use the air drill to spin the PMG as fast as it can. This provides just enough power to test our ignition system. We should see a spark on both igniters, allowing us to see that the system is working properly. Once we've completed our ignition test, we then need to make the system safe again in the same way that we did before. We have energized the system, so it's imperative that we, again, follow the proper procedures for disassembly. Remove the input lead from the exciter, wait our 5 minutes as prescribed, remove the igniter high tension lead, ground it to the case, remove the igniter from the test box, do the same thing on the other side, remove the output lead from the PMG, reinstall the PMG in accordance with the manual. On the PMG, when we go to replace it, there's a dowel pin right here that must line up with the hole in the bottom of the PMG. Make sure that the PMG is correctly oriented to be reinstalled. And then reconnect everything on the engine, install the igniter, all our leads reconnected, everything torqued according to spec. If you're not given a specific torque spec, use the standard torque chart for the A7. This completes our ignition system test project.